John Lennon wrote Don't Let Me Down for Yoko Ono during the first weeks of 1969 when their relationship had become the center of his life. Paul McCartney later remembered the song as a genuine plea from someone excited by a new love, but frightened by how emotionally exposed it had left him. Lennon was asking Yoko for reassurance in the plainest way possible. He had placed enormous trust in her, and he needed to know she would not abandon him. And that vulnerability explains why the song feels less like a polished Beatles love song and more like something being confessed in real time. The Beatles worked on the song throughout the troubled Get Back sessions, first at Twickenham Film Studios and then in the basement of Apple's headquarters on Savile Row. The version chosen for the single was recorded at Apple on January 28, 1969, with Lennon on rhythm guitar, Paul on bass and harmony vocals, George on lead guitar, and Ringo on drums. But also with Billy Preston on Fender Rhodes electric piano. And Preston's warm, rolling keyboard part became one of the recording's defining sounds. And there's also a small mystery hidden in the supposedly live performance. Lennon's vocals on the finished single do not completely match the surviving January session tape. Beatles recording researchers believe additional vocals were added during an undocumented session sometime in February, although the precise date remains uncertain. That possible overdub is especially funny because the single was promoted as the Beatles returning to a natural stripped-down style with little studio trickery. Don't Let Me Down appeared on the B-side of Get Back on April 11, 1969, and both sides were credited to the Beatles with Billy Preston. And by that, I mean credited to the Beatles with Billy Preston. A little different than just the Beatles with Billy Preston as an asterisk. Preston later said the printed credit surprised him because nobody had warned him that his name would appear on the record. At a time when the Beatles were having trouble working together, an outsider had walked into the room, helped settle the atmosphere, improved two major songs, and unexpectedly ended up sharing the artist credit on their next worldwide hit. 2 days after recording the single version, the Beatles performed Don't Let Me Down twice during their rooftop concert on January 30th. Neither rooftop performance is the recording heard on the original single. Stranger still, the familiar rooftop version released on Let It Be Naked in 2003 and used for the official promotional video was created by editing the two separate rooftop performances together. What looks and sounds like one continuous final performance is therefore a carefully assembled composite. The rooftop concert lasted about 42 minutes before complaints brought police officers into the building, making Lennon's desperate request ring out across central London during the Beatles' last public performance. Despite being one of the strongest songs from the entire project, Don't Let Me Down was left off the original Let It Be album when Phil Spector prepared it for release in 1970. It remained an oddly homeless Beatles classic, recorded for the project, performed in its film, released beside Get Back, yet missing from the finished soundtrack album. Let It Be Naked finally restored it in 2003, although through the edited rooftop performance rather than the original single master. The song began as Lennon's fear that Yoko might leave him, but it was completed while the Beatles themselves were moving toward their own breakup. That accidental second meaning is what makes the recording hit so hard. Lennon was begging one relationship to survive, while another was quietly ending around him.